Hello and welcome to the Outcast. I'm your host HC, and with me is.
Wolf.
And today, oh boy, we're back to Spider-Man. To those who don't remember, around almost 2 years ago, we did a whole review on the new animated series,
Oh God,
which
that is right. I
was
forgot about that.
oh, on that note, there are fans who are making the new animated series season 2 on Kickstarter. Go check that out. Give them love, I suppose. But yeah, with the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, inches, less than a month at the time of this recording, that close to us, we decided let's go over the Spider-Man movies because you know what? I love Spider-Man, as I said. He's my favorite superhero, one of my favorite characters. Wolf, what is your take on the Spider-Man?
Oh God, he's awful. Who cares? Terrible
Well,
hero.
you're fired. Bye.
No, Spider-Man's always been like kind of I'm not a fan, right? I'm not like super into like a bunch of comic book and superhero stuff, but I would say Spider-Man's like a well-known name. Something like when you think superheroes, when you think comic book heroes, especially, I think a lot of people are going to go to the two, arguably in a general audience sense, right? The two biggest names are probably Spider-Man and Batman because they've had probably the most films out
I'd
of any
say,
character.
people say that like the first three people would shoot at you are Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Marvel's probably changed that nowadays, but
Yeah.
before the MCU, I would say Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman were probably the three big names that people, when you ask them what comic book heroes do you know, those were the three they would probably pick out first, and then it would go from there. But for me, I would say I'm mostly a general audience fan. I've not read too many comics. I've seen a few. I've seen most of the movies, and that's about it. So fun.
So, as the bigger Spider-Man fan of us both, I would say that I've read some of the comics. I'm not planning on reading all of them because I know I will lose my damn mind if I try. But I've watched all the animated series that aired over the years, all the movies. Obviously, we'll get to all of them as this goes along. And I played the games, obviously. I'm the Spider Man guy out of the both of us.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but with that said, this isn't really much about who's just so that people will know how we're coming into this. And just to break this down, we are gonna go over all the movies, but we're gonna break this up. This episode in particular is gonna only cover the Sam Raimi trilogy.
The first three ever
All
Spider-Man films.
Yep, and also just to let you guys know, there's not gonna be much of a spoiler section this time because these movies are old.
I
If
mean,
you're listening to this, you probably seen them. If you didn't, then close this video, go watch them, come back. But I don't really see the point because it's
listen,
been so long. Everyone knows them.
listen, Zoomers, you ain't welcome here. I said it.
Um,
The only people who wouldn't have seen these films when they first came out are Zoomers. Get out of here. You ain't welcome here.
I am sure if the people who clicked on this video most likely saw them. Come at a hunch.
That's right, because they're not
But
Zoomers, because Zoomers ain't welcome here. That's right, I'm
if
starting
it will
beef.
shut
Come
you,
at me.
if it will shut you up and we can move along, why not? Sure.
You gotta
But
start beef, HC.
anyway, yeah. But the general thoughts about the trilogy. I can say this as both a Spider-Man fan and as someone who's a big movie buff and also studied film. If it weren't for those movies, I wouldn't be where I am today because when the first movie came out, I was 9 years old. And at the time, what I knew about Spider-Man was comics, animated shows, and stuff. And when the first movie came out when I was a little kid, this was the movie that made me say, this is what I want to do. I wanna do something with movies. I wanna learn how they did that. I want to do this because that movie really impacted me. And so did the sequels to an extent. But so the Sam Raimi trilogy, no matter what I'm gonna say about it, still holds a very special place in my heart. It's very important to me, and I'm very connected with it from a personal point of view.
I mean, you bring up how it's super important to you, but I mean, it's worth pointing out, right? Like these three films in particular are super important to comic book films as a genre in general, right?
That too, that I was about to say, I also really appreciate them for what they did because before this and X-Men, the first X-Men movie too, I think. These
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
the two that kind of brought comic book movies back to the spotlight because the comic book movies had a few rough patches between this. Like I think Batman and Robin was the last known one before these two, and
And it
it's
was.
not much. It's not much famous like it's infamous. People know Batman and Robin, and people know why people know Batman and Robin.
It's a fun movie, but it's not a good movie. But it's a fun one. But yeah, like before this, it's worth pointing out, comic book films were pretty much on the downturn. Like they were very much declining. No one
Like at
saw
the
any
point,
worth in them. They were pretty
yeah,
much suicide for making a movie. If you made a comic book movie, you
there
weren't
was
expecting to make a lot of money at the time.
yeah because I think around really ever since Tim Burton's Batman really nothing really captured even the Batman films which came after no one really matched that success. And then it was kind of seen as poison to the point, the Superman Lives movie, which was supposed to be directed by Tim Burton and starring Nicolas Cage, that died because comic book movies were just not seen as a profitable thing.
I mean, they were box
And
office poison at the time, essentially.
yeah, and a Spider-Man movie was in the works for like years, decades even before we got this.
Yep. And so,
And
oh, go ahead.
and the fact that again, this and X-Men. I don't want to dwell on X-Men, but this was the one where like people started taking superheroes seriously again. This is the one that brought it back.
I
It
mean,
was
yeah, I would agree. Like this set the stage for comic book films moving forward, right? The MCU as we know it right now more than likely wouldn't exist if this
no way it
failed.
wouldn't exist. Yeah, if the first Spider-Man wouldn't have been a success, we wouldn't have the MCU. We wouldn't have honestly a lot of the movie industry as we know today. Honestly, it did change the game in some sense.
Yeah, like it set the stage, I would say. I don't know. I would argue, right, like going back and watching these films, just to get into general thoughts real quick for me, I would say these films are very dated. They are products of their time, I feel somewhat. And looking back now, having watched what we've gotten now, you can feel this sense of they're not as good, right? Like there's a lot of stilted dialogue, stuff like that, that just make you just scratch your head a little bit and like, what was that about? A little weird, little
It
off. You can
it
see the what's the word,
the time you can see when
what,
this was made.
not so
You
much
can
the
see
time. Well, you can see
also
the time, but you can also see, like, the dadgummit. I can't think of the word, but you can see like ah, the thing. You get it.
yeah, okay,
Audience. You know what I mean.
sure. We can
I
see the
can't think of
thing.
the word.
You
It'll
can
come
see
to me
that
later.
Spider-Man shoots web, but yeah, I do agree with you that for the record, okay, before we actually get into this, as much as I say that I love this trilogy, and and it has a very special place in my heart, and it really shaped a lot of what I'm doing today and our people I met and everything. They are not perfect. And for the record, jumping a bit ahead, we'll get more into this the more we delve into the other series. But I don't think any Spider-Man film series was perfect. Like, no one nailed it. Not this one, not the amazing ones, and not the MCU ones. The only one that did is Spider-Verse, but we'll get to that. So
I mean, I feel like personally we've seen, as Spider-Man has gone on from like, excuse me, from film series to film series, from the Sam Raimi trilogy to Amazing Spider-Man to the Marvel films. I feel like time and experience with doing comic book films and superhero films and everything has gotten better. Like, if you watch a Marvel film now, and if you've watched the Marvel films and that's all you've seen, and you go back and watch these, you're probably not going to like them as much, because you're going to be like, wow, films are so much better now, because these are dated and you can see like the pitfalls and the early beginnings of everything going on here. Like, I genuinely, I may talk about a lot of the potential problems these films have, but it is worth noting that these films walked, Spider-Man, X-Men, some of the early comic book films, stuff like that. These films walked so the Marvel universe could run. Like, let's be very clear about that. And like, let's make it.
You say that though, and yeah, in some sense, these films did age, but there's also something about them, something about their style, something about how they're made, something about the characters that really I can't really point. Whether it's good or bad, you'd be the judge. But but at the same time, I don't feel like it's like any other superhero movie which was made before or after this.
No, I agree.
Like, it has its own style and kookiness to it that, in a sense, I maybe it's just I'm looking at it because big nostalgia goggles on these movies, I'm aware, but there's still some sort of charm that I think not a lot, even the less serious superhero movies which were made after this, because this also kind of predated the dark and brooding superhero movies phase, with Daredevil and Batman Begins and all
Blade.
That. Blade too. Blade was a bit after
Blade was
this. Yeah.
Blade was a bit after this, I believe. Check and make sure. But yeah, all the dark superhero films came after this.
Yeah. So
no,
the thing
Blade
is
was,
that
I was wrong. Blade was 4 years before this, actually.
Oh, okay. But the point is, though, after Spider-Man, there was still many, dark and brooding superhero movies throughout the 2000s. So there was this thing that this trilogy there wasn't anything like it back then, and I'd even argue that there's still some sort of weird style to them that hasn't been replicated now. Not necessarily that it needs to, but I'm just saying they stand out in their own weird way, and in a sense, it makes them fun to revisit every once in a while. I still enjoy them.
No, I agree with you. There is a uniqueness to these films that I would that I would agree hasn't been done, that wasn't done before these films, and really hasn't been done after these films either. Like, they definitely stand on their own and apart from other comic book films. But still yet, right? Like, we bring up the importance of these films because if you go back and watch them, you're probably not going to see them in as good a light as someone who grew up with them and who they were more important to, right? You probably are going to see more flaws than.
And also considering today with how many people meme those movies to hell and back.
Deservedly so, let's be honest. Deservedly so.
No, deservedly. I'm not saying that it's not deserved, but I'm saying if you came into those movies with from all the Bully Maguire memes or the Rent memes, it's like, you are not gonna get a lot of those. It's just little moments in a trilogy, specifically the third film. It's not even Like the red guy shows up in Spider-Man 2, but still, it's not like that thing about them. If you're coming in just to see those memes and where they came from, you're gonna be disappointed because those movies are not just that. But at the same time, yeah, the memes are deserved. This, like, okay, kind of jumping at, there's a woman in Spider-Man 2. When Doc Ock climbs the building with Aunt May, there's this woman who just screams
Oh
and runs around, and
God,
then she runs all the way to the camera. Like, come on, come
it's
on,
so
this is
stupid. And
and
then
like,
I'm sorry, but Tobey Maguire's like, I said this when we covered Harry Potter, the whimsy face where it's just wide-eyed and just mouth just slightly agape. That is Peter Parker in this film in a nutshell, just the whimsy face. In everything. It's
okay,
like, we need
you
you to
know
be
what?
sad here. Okay. Whimsy face. It's just so stupid at all times.
As some other podcaster I used to listen to before they went off the air said, he has this feels very doll boy face, you know?
I agree. 100%. I agree with that person. 100% he does, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help going back on a rewatch. It doesn't work for him too
Okay,
well.
as a Spider-Man fan who
It
has
makes the
some
films more
sort of an idea,
funnier than what they should be going back.
at some points, yeah, like he has those dweeb moments, which again, okay, you know what? I'll just say this as a person who came into this and still watches these movies with some sort of an idea what Spider-Man is, right? I have a way of seeing this character. I'd say that Maguire does really well when it comes to like the dweeby high school Peter Parker, like before he becomes the superhero, before he dons the mask. Because Peter Parker originally was a dweeb. He was a nerd. So he has that. Like, actually, when you say the whimsical face, but I think when he fights with Flash in the school, and after he punches him, he has this like really like a dweeb way he looks at his hand. It's like, okay, you know what? This works because this is a person who was never able to do this before. This I can get. That it works there.
Yeah.
What it stops working is when we come to like Spider-Man 2 and 3, where this guy is supposed to be an adult. This is a guy who is supposed to gain experience and develop, and this is where it starts going downhill because
Yeah.
I feel he's not really learning. And this is kind of, you can say he never really learns in the comics. Well, that's a comic book problem, which is a topic for a whole other day, where they can't age them too much.
Yeah,
But
it
in
never
here,
feels like he grows here, and in a movie you expect to see growth and change. And
in the first one, yes. Second one, he starts and then stops.
third
Third movie,
one,
what the hell went on? What the hell happened here?
it feels like we went back, and that's kind of the problem with these movies. Like, it's and that's why we sit here and say like these movies aren't like the best movies in the world, right? Like there are arguably better
And
superhero movies that have come after it.
some people say that to this day this is the best superhero trilogy. Which again, I love these movies, but I can't say that because also
Yeah.
Spider-Man as a character isn't nailed yet. Like again, in the first movie, he's not doing this a lot, but he's creepy, like I kind of expect him to be. And then in the second and third one, he has quips, but it's not like it's not a trademark of his. It's not that he's known for it for any particular reason.
We'll get to them eventually, right? But I feel like the Amazing Spider-Man films nailed the quippiness more personally.
We'll get to those, but
that's your small tidbit before then.
Yeah, but so again, when people say that this is the only Spider-Man adaptation that matters and stuff, it's like, no, they miss a lot. They miss some pretty major things. And considering Peter Parker is an adult for most of those movies, like he's really only in high school for the first act of the first movie, and then he's on his own. So it is kind of a problem that he's not really growing. by the end of it. Like, obviously, there's an entire discussion. We'll get into this after we are done talking about the movies, but there was supposed to be a Spider-Man 4. We'll get to that. But when you finish watching, so full story coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But when you finish Spider-Man 3, knowing this is the last one, unless the No Way Home rumors are true, honestly, I don't care until I see the movie. Shut up, people. When you get to the end of Spider-Man 3, knowing this is the last one, did you feel like the story really ended?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I felt, if, going back and watching it now, yeah, I would still say, like, I felt, I'm okay with this. Like, it's done. I can walk away. I'm happy with that. I enjoyed my time with it. It wasn't, like, terrible. It wasn't. I say that like it was, no, it was fun. Like, it was good. It was overall decent.
Yeah,
I had fun with it.
Again, good, decent. You had a good time with it. Great. So am I.
I mean,
what I'm asking though, when you're getting to the point of it, did Peter Parker learn anything by the end of this? Did Spider-Man end up being a better person, a better superhero after all of this?
I would say there's the potential for that, but I've not entirely seen it yet. Based on, like, from the first movie to the third movie, I felt like, there was some growth in there, then there were some back steps, and I don't know where he's going to land at now. But as far as the movie goes, that's not something I have to be shown or even really care to be shown. I'm happy with how it ended. Like, I don't need more, personally.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair, I suppose. So with that said,
I'm sure I'm in the minority with that, though.
I mean, like, I can see how this could be an end, but when I'm looking at it's like, so what did it all lead up to? I don't feel like it really led up to anything except that anyone who's connected to Peter Parker is gonna die eventually, because there's a funeral in each one of those movies. But
that is true. That's legit true.
But then again, it's comic books. It's like
excuse me. And it's I would say, right, that it
well,
I'm here. I've lost my train of thought, I suppose. It's
okay.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I guess I'm not a super huge fan, and I'm not super into Spider-Man. If I judge it on just the story basis, oh crap, gotta sneeze. All right,
You're not sure.
Like, on a story basis, I'm more or less happy with where it ended at. I don't need more. I don't really want more. On a character basis, if I was potentially way more into the characters, maybe I'd want more. But unfortunately, I'm just not that into these characters, and I can't see where they would take it after this point. I can't see, like, if there was a fourth movie, what would they do with it, and what would I want from it? I don't really know. And I feel like it's better off if they just ended at 3 and be done with it, personally.
Well, I'll tell the story about the canceled Spider-Man 4 in a bit.
I mean, that could change my opinion. I don't know, but
So, but this is for Spider-Man himself. I think I should have asked this before, at the beginning. But which one of those 3 would you say was your favorite?
Oh, I would have said, before I rewatched them, I felt like I would have said the second one, because I felt like Alfred Molina was a good villain. But going back and rewatching them, I kind of lean more towards the third to a degree.
Oh, we have a Spider-Man 3 is my favorite, people. Let's go.
I mean, I feel like that's mostly because of the villain. I think overall, I would lean more towards the first one, actually, being like the best one of the bunch. But I feel like all 3 have points that are worth taking. Like, I think the third one does, with Sandman. I don't know what the villain's name is.
Yeah, Sandman.
Okay, I got it right. I think he's the best villain they have out of all three, hands down.
which
Like his motivation,
I,
everything about him is just great.
yeah, on that note, I do want to say that, you know, I've seen those movies when they came out, and my mother saw them with me. And the thing I remember the most is that she's not into comic books, so she enjoys the MCU, but that's like only because they ground everything.
Yeah.
But when she saw these movies, she like was like, yeah, it's for my son. I'm gonna try. But the Sandman, she still remembers. Like if she sees him in like a video game or a poster of him or something, she'll go, "Hey, that's the Sandman guy, right?" Because she remembers that story. So,
Mm.
say what you want about Spider-Man 3. Kudos to that part. That part was done really well.
I mean, yeah, like, I guess we're jumping into spoilers at this point, but spoilers, right? Watching him in the third movie when he first tries to reform himself from the sand and everything, like, it's a very good moment. It's extremely well done for what they did there and showing his emotions and everything. It's probably one of the best parts of the movie, I would argue.
Yeah, like when he awakens after the transformation. That's a really great scene. Like if you cut it from the movie and just this could have been a short film.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is good. It is extremely well done. Like they brought their A game for that one, at the very least.
Yeah. So for me, I'd still say the second one is
Yeah,
my
that's fair.
favorite of the three. And it's mostly not just because one, Alfred Molina was a great Doc Ock, even before the movies was one of my favorite villains, but it's also to me that from this trilogy, and this is the one which really got Spider-Man's shtick, Spider-Man's core, which is the conflict between the man and the mask. I think from this trilogy in particular, this is the one that really emphasizes the the problems
Mm.
when it comes to a guy trying to do this and balance an adult life.
Yeah.
And because there's a saying that goes, like the best Spider-Man stories are the one when Peter Parker's world and Spider-Man's world collide. And I think from this series, this is the one that got it the most. Like the guy who's trying to not disappoint the people around him, but he's also has this responsibility and wanting to make up for his uncle's untimely demise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the second one really got that core nailed. Does it still has a problem, and a big one at that, where he's kind of suffering from what's it called, from like perform I don't want to call it that because it's not that, but I guess performance anxiety, maybe that's what's going on there.
I
Where
I
he,
mean, let's
where
be
he,
honest, they kind of put it forward as this kind of like impotency thing and performance anxiety, and like it's that. That's kind of, it may not be exactly what they intend for it to be, but everything they surround it with and the moments they surround it with, that's how it comes off. Whether they intended it to be that or not, that's how it comes off. That's on them. That's their
yeah,
fault.
but the thing is that there's this thing that so like we said, they're putting this up as performance anxiety, and it's like I don't really think this is what I would call it when those abilities are connected to his body and his blood, because
I mean, I thought that was the
biggest
dumbest
change.
part of the movie, though, to be honest with you. I feel like that part of the movie is just the weakest part, where it's like, oh, I
No,
can't use
that's
my
what I'm
powers
saying.
because I'm having problems with Mary Jane. And it's just,
That's exactly what I'm saying. That for this good conflict, what really causes the performance anxiety is that he can't be with Mary Jane, which one kind of goes back on him making the sacrifice to not be with her in the first movie because mumbo jumbo, if people discover who I am, they'll try to kidnap her to get to me. Fuck my aunt, but Mary Jane, no, 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 no.
I
This
mean,
is where.
Even before they discovered Mary Jane was always in trouble anyways, because that's all her character is just being in trouble and
Yeah,
being saved.
that's actually, you know what? Let's fucking talk about that. That before that, like throughout this entire trilogy, Peter saves MJ 6 times throughout the entire trilogy. In the lunch, there's one, including that one time in the lunchroom. That's 6 times. Out of those 6 times, 5 are before they start dating and before she knew he was Spider-Man. Only one was after they even dated and she knew. So if anything, I think them getting together kind of improved things, wouldn't you say?
Probably. I mean, I feel sorry for poor Kirsten Dunst because she's given just nothing to work with in this movie, in my
No,
opinion, and
like
she does good.
I'm sure she's a sweetheart. She's a great actress in other things, but it's not her problem. It's the same kind of with Peter, that it's not necessarily Tobey Maguire's problem that he's given so many crying scenes, like for the love of God, and that MJ is just a damsel and they took out all of her sass and all of her spice and all of the things that made her interesting. It's a writing problem. It's a problem where the actors are given nothing to work with. And it's not necessarily their fault, but it's also it's just an
yeah, like, I mean, that's kind of the problem with the movies, and that's where you can see like the beginnings, the frayed edges where they just got started and they were figuring things out still. I would argue, barring, we'll kind of get to it more, but I would argue like the MCU's Mary Jane is more interesting.
MJ, yeah. That her name is Michelle, but her initials are MJ. Yeah, that's what she's supposed to be. I get you.
I would argue she's more interesting than this, than the Raimi trilogy's made MJ, right?
She's more interesting, she's also more useful for one.
Ouch, but fair and true.
What does MJ do in these movies? The only thing she does
she threw a brick at Venom.
Yeah,
and she tried to hit Doc Ock with a piece of wood and then got smacked away.
Doc Ock part cracks me up every time. Every time, never fails. It's fantastic.
Grab the wood, swat away.
She dropped a brick at Venom, rent for later, by the way. And yeah, it does nothing. He gets angry with her for a second, and then she yells and screams again, and Peter and Harry need to save her. So yeah, she's useless.
She's not useless. She did 2 things. She did one thing. She tried to do the other. No, she did hit Venom with a brick. No one else can claim they've hit Venom with a brick.
It doesn't matter if Venom in Spider-Man 3 success, but again, we'll get to it.
Listen, give poor that 70s show guy actor whose name I don't remember and can never remember.
Topher Grace, and if I may quote myself from a video I made not too long ago, Topher Grace is a name I do not accept in my house.
Listen, he's not a bad actor. He tried.
I don't know. I never liked him.
He's all right. I've seen better. I've seen worse.
He has this face I want to punch. Okay? That's one.
Fair.
And we'll get to Venom in a bit. But what were we talking about before?
We're talking about the Spider-Man films and how great they are.
We were talking about MJ, though. We said something with MJ, that she's
totally useful and she's always helping.
Yeah, like Princess Peach is totally useful and helping in the Mario games.
Listen, at least Peach has been more useful in the past few games than Mary Jane has ever been in her entire life in this film trilogy.
Point taken. But anyway, we talked about Peter, we talked about MJ. Harry Osborne. What do you think about Harry Osborne?
Harry is played by James Franco. Yeah, okay.
James Franco.
To make sure.
Which I want to say, watching those movies after the Disaster Artist came out and is a thing. No. Don't get me wrong, I like James Franco, he's a great actor, but like now every time I see him in movies, I just imagine Tommy Wiseau popping out of him and going, "Oh, hi Peter, how's your sex life?"
I've not seen that film. He plays him in that?
Yeah,
I've not
he
seen that
plays,
film yet.
and like, don't
I'm
get,
glad
and
I've
like,
not seen that film. That would ruin this film trilogy for me if I've seen that film.
so for the record, watch The Disaster Artist because it's a great film, but
I need to go
also,
watch it now.
damn, I can't, like, there's a point after the demonstration Doc Ock does in Spider-Man 2, where everyone is evacuated, and there's the point where he goes, "I'm ruined. I have nothing left except Spider-Man." This is like, I feel the Tommy was so coming out in that specific scene. But he's a good Harry Osborn. I like him in those
Yeah,
movies,
I
and
think
I think he's also given an arc. You know, he has a story to
yeah,
him.
not surprising considering he's the one that dies at the end. Not Mary Jane for once.
No, MJ doesn't really die in other, like maybe in some. Nothing comes to mind.
I mean, she
Uh,
dies in the Amazing films, does she not?
MJ is not in the
Oh
Amazing
no, that's
Spider-Man
right. It
movies.
focuses on Gwen
It's
Stacy,
Gwen
doesn't it?
Stacy,
Yeah,
and
she's
we'll
the one
get
who
to
dies.
it.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
there.
we'll get to it.
We'll get there. Not
Yeah,
this
we'll get
episode, but
there.
we'll get there. I'm jumping ahead, but yeah, like, well, isn't the joke that MJ dies a lot? Isn't that like a
It's not that she
joke?
dies. It's not that she dies. It's more that, again, at least in these movies, that she's the damsel in distress.
I mean, like
That
in general sense, like in comic book sense, in general Spider-Man
no,
lore, MJ
she's
dies a
not.
lot.
No, it's the more again. Like the biggest thing people harp on, and rightfully so, is the One More Day story where she and Peter sell their marriage to the devil, and it is the devil. You can't tell me otherwise. But other than that, she's not necessarily dying, at least not in the main continuity.
That's a story. Comic books.
We
Movie.
can we can do an entire podcast about One More Day, and I will lose my sanity if we do. So
It sounds like something interesting. But yeah, like, I like James Franco's Harry. I think he's a really good Harry Osborn. I think, if we're talking about actors, right? We Kirsten Dunst is Mary Jane. I don't think she's a bad actress. I've seen her in other stuff. She's very good. But her as
she's
Mary
just
Jane
not given
here,
good material to
I
work
think
with.
she tries. But yeah, I just meh. Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. Yeah, I think he, as you said, I think he, for the most part, nails Peter Parker. I think it gets annoying when he doesn't really change up any at all, especially after getting the superpowers, like in the second film or third film, where he's had time with them at that point. It gets old, it gets annoying, him still playing like the high school dweeb Peter Parker, who's not really grown up any at all. It's
Yeah, and
that's where it starts to
this
fall
kind
apart,
of
like you
brings
said.
up that my main problem with 3 actually is that not only doesn't he grow, but it feels like, what did I say was the focus of Spider-Man 2? Was him trying to balance the dual life, trying to understand how to manage both of those things, and eventually coming out stronger than he was, supposedly, maybe, I don't know. And then Spider-Man 3 starts, and it's like, we are completely ignoring that.
Going back
Completely.
pretty much on the same exact thing again after a bit in that movie.
Not that we're just coming back. It's just that suddenly life is perfect for him. He's managing to balance both of those things. Everything's going great, which to an extent I actually like it for MJ's character, because when the movie started, Peter was the dweeb and she was the successful one. And now we are at this point where she needs the support. She's going through the motions. She has the problems. She needs someone to be there for her, and Peter isn't there because he's doing Spider-Man stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And on the one hand, she likes it, but on the other hand, she doesn't like it. And this is the part where it's actually becoming interesting, when they're actually together and they're trying to go through relationship problems, which even then isn't really handled all that well, because then Harry blackmails her to break up with him, otherwise he'll kill Peter. And it's like, Did you forget your name, Spider-Man, sis? You know that you can just tell him, and he'll go beat the guy up, which he does anyway. So what the hell happened there? But there's this thing also where she tells him, well, like MJ tells Peter, about the bad review she got for the play, right? She was in the play, and she tells them that she's bummed about the bad review she got. And and he tells her, well, Spider-Man gets Spider-Man gets shut on by the press every time. Look at Jameson and everything, and it kind of knows how it shows how clueless he is. Which, again, on the one hand, I kind of like that they have this conflict, but it's also that being Spider-Man isn't being an actress on Broadway who needs to keep a job going, and we also see that she gets replaced. Like after that one performance night, they are already looking for replacements for her. So it's one of those things that on the one hand I get his point, but it shows how much he's not learning about the world, because she tells them something that's really painful. Where she tells them, I'm looking at this world and it's like my father wrote them. Yeah, we are completely ignoring the fact that she has an abusive father, by the way. Don't expect to see that. And then he just kind of leaves her there to mope when he's going to do Spider-Man stuff. And it's interesting, but it also shows that it's a problem that also the comics have every once in a while, that Peter doesn't really act like an adult a lot of the times. He's missing the man in Spider-Man. And in the comics, I get it. Again, you need to keep him like a certain age and everything. Bullshit, editorial reasons. But in this, you don't have those. You don't have to worry about those. You can age him up. You can make him grow, and they don't do it. At least I don't feel they do.
Yeah, I would agree with you entirely. I think if the movie would have focused on the issues between Peter and Mary Jane for the third one, and been more about Peter learning to understand other people and their problems and be less full of himself when it comes to Spider-Man, I think it would have been more enjoyable, especially if it would have done this thing of, because again, I think, right, if it would have focused on him and Sandman, and maybe Harry, maybe not. I really don't know in regards to that one and what to do for all of that.
I guess Harry, yes, because they build him up in Spider-Man 2, so might as well do something with that.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest wasted time is everything with Venom. Like, I feel like, oh, it's Spider-Man, we got to do something with Venom. This just wasn't the film.
So are we going into the Venom stuff now?
Before we do, I at least
the Venom stuff?
Before we do, we should at least talk about Willem Dafoe. Let's get the good stuff out of the way first.
Let's go over the villains by order. So, Green Goblin.
Willem Dafoe is beautiful. I love this man and his overacting as Green Goblin.
I am willing to bet you that any day he was on set and he woke up, he's like, I am going to Hulk. It's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah.
As soon as he jumps out of the tube where he gets the green smoke, like when he's jumping on the thing, like with his arms to the side, and he's laying down and goes, it's like beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Or when he's talking to himself in the mirror, right? And he's just walking up to it and just throwing his glass across the room.
We killed them. We remember.
Yeah. And the stupid laugh. It's great. It's wonderful.
No. I also love that part where he has the mask on the chair and he's crawling down. It's like, it's so amazing.
It's dumb, but it's wonderful.
But it's amazing.
Yeah. It's super over the top. It feels super over the top, and it seems super over the top, and it probably is, but it's great.
And speaking of one of my favorite parts is also, in the end, like when they fight in that warehouse, right? And so there's the point where, like, Norman tries to do the entire like, let me be your father, Peter. Let me, you are like a son to me. And Peter tells them like, I had a father. His name was Ben Parker. And he goes, Godspeed, Spider-Man. He orders the glider. Peter now, senses it, jumps out, and when Norman realizes the glider is gonna impale him, he just goes, oh.
Yeah, that little, it's so weird too, because it's like this quick cut to him and it's like flash freeze. Oh, stabbed. It's
like,
so, it feels so out of place. Like,
no, you know what this is? It's like in a Roadrunner cartoon where Wile E. Coyote pulls on the yikes side.
That's fair. That's a good comparison. It's a really good comparison.
That's exactly what it is. But it's just like, oh.
God. Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin is probably the best Green Goblin we'll ever get. Let's be honest.
Yeah, most likely.
I'm not saying good Green Goblin, but the best Green Goblin. The one-of-a-kind Green Goblin.
My God, though, that scene where he's talking to Spider-Man on the roof. Oh, God, that part. Well, like Spidey is sitting there, right? Kind of hazy from the fog, from like the sleep gas. Also, by the way, he goes, sleep.
Yes. That's so stupid.
So, yeah, he puts him on the roof, and then there's this point where he slaps his head and then like leans on this thing. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? What? You know what? I would love to be on set when this was filmed, just to hear Sam Raimi's direction. It's like, okay, you're gonna slap his head, and then you're gonna lean on this thing like you're trying to act cool in the water cooler or something. Action.
To be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, Willem Dafoe, wonderful. Also, when he comes back for the small cameos in the later movies, I love in Spider-Man 2 where he shows up in the mirror and he goes, "Avenge me, Harry! Avenge me!"
But yeah, Green Goblin, good villain. Willem Dafoe is very much overacting, but it's just wonderful to see.
I'm so looking forward to him coming back in No Way Home, by the way.
Oh, he is? Oh, God.
Yeah. There's actually a story, after he appeared in the trailer, there was a story that he actually walked around set covering his face with a blanket so that Tom Holland won't see him. And when Tom Holland saw him, he freaked out.
Very nice. Yeah, that'd be fun, I'm sure.
Okay, one final note. There's the scene on the bridge, which is obviously supposed to be a reference to the night Gwen Stacy died, but we have MJ and Spidey does manage to save her.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to that later, but the other thing I love is that there's kind of this Go New York scene where all those people start throwing garbage at him, and it's like, is this really the best we could do after the 9/11 trailer was pulled out?
I mean, it's...
You know the story, right?
Oh, yes, I know about all that, where, because of 9/11 happened and everything, they pulled the Twin Towers off because they were destroyed after that point and everything. That's why they didn't show that trailer anymore.
There was a teaser trailer which showed a bank robbery, and then the helicopter is caught in a giant spider web that was casted between the Twin Towers. And then, you see Spider-Man and everything. So, yeah, after 9/11, this trailer was recalled, and they also recalled posters which had a slight image of the World Trade Center in Spidey's eye.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so was this the replacement?
Maybe.
Speaking of which, that quick shot of the Twin Towers being in Spider-Man's eye, that's still in the movie, kinda. It's really quick, you won't notice it, but that shot specifically is still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to freeze frame it.
Which make me believe it was supposed to be a part of the movie, but okay, whatever. Moving on, Doc Ock. Alfred Molina is Dr. Octavius.
Probably, like, the best leading villain we get, I would say.
And also, I'd say, Willem Dafoe I love because of how much he hams it up, but Alfred Molina I legit like. He's a legit good villain.
Yeah, like this is, Alfred, like Willem Dafoe was hamming it up as Green Goblin. Alfred Molina is just, he's playing Dr. Octavius, he's playing Doc Ock, and it feels like an actual person, right? Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin didn't really feel like an actual person or, a human being.
Before he becomes Green Goblin, somewhat. After he becomes Green Goblin,
Yeah. But yeah, Doc Ock, it feels like an actual human going through all of this, right?
And also the train scene. Mwah.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. And actually, funny thing, I love that scene. By the way, J.K. Simmons as Jameson. Wonderful performance. And considering J.K. Simmons is one of my favorite actors of all time now, these were the first times I saw him, and what an introduction. He's amazing.
Let's be honest. I feel like everyone really at this point, when they picture J. Jonah Jameson, they picture J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson. Like that's the voice they hear, that's the image they get in their mind. That's J. Jonah Jameson. Like if there's anyone who is inherently typecast, I feel it's J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson in these films. I would argue most people would see it that way too. I don't feel like there's many characters in, like I think most of these characters, right? Like, when you think Harry or when you think Peter, you probably see someone else. You don't see Toby or James Franco. But when you think J. Jonah Jameson, you probably think J.K. Simmons. You probably see him as J.
And again, there's a reason why they recast him for the MCU now.
Because he's probably the best and only J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, and not only that, he also voiced the character in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. Like, he's so associated with this character. He was born to play this character. So, but just to kind of come back to, there's the scene where him and I think it's Ravi, where they try to come up with a name for him. So they think like Doc Ock, Doctor, and one of the names Ravi brings up is Doctor Strange, and Jameson goes, "It's good, but it's taken." And like, how ironic and fitting that now Sam Raimi is directing the next Doctor Strange movie.
Neat. One of those things that adds up.
Yeah, like everything comes full circle. Everything comes full circle, and it's kind of amazing. But so yeah, Doc Ock, I really don't have much to say because Alfred Molina just really nailed that role. And again, like with J.K. Simmons, I got to know him through this role, and he's an actor I also really appreciate. He's a really good actor. I guess you agree.
Yes, I do.
So moving on to the Spider-Man 3 trio. Harry, we talked about. I'm not sure what to feel about him suddenly having this temporary amnesia. That was kind of dumb.
I honestly, I feel like it was done mostly just because they had no idea what to do with Harry in that film. I feel like, oh, he knows Peter's Spider-Man. I don't know.
I think they had an idea, but then they had to balance them, with Sandman and Venom and all those other things, and it's like, so amnesia, go.
Yeah, like that's the problem with the third film. It just feels like there's too much going on in it, and it doesn't really know how to balance it all.
But then we also get to Sandman, which on the one hand, I like what they did to him with his daughter, that he's doing these crimes for his daughter. That's a legitimately good setup. And I like, him using the powers and the scene where he wakes up and everything. Great. And then they kind of shit all over it by making him Uncle Ben's killer.
Yeah, I don't see why I can see why they did that change. Like, it could be good because then you can rope in this idea of, like, if they would have focused on just Spider-Man and Sandman, right? Where you have Peter kind of losing touch with reality in regards to Mary Jane and everything, and then, not being there for her. And then when he needs someone there for him because, if they're going for this idea anyways, where, Peter needs someone there for him now because we found out that there was an actual different killer, someone who actually killed his Uncle Ben. This
Yeah,
is the real killer.
and
But,
on the other
and
hand,
so
I
he
kind
has
of
this. Hold on, let me finish. He has this, the
yeah.
guilt from killing the first guy, right, and everything. Like, if they would have focused on Sandman, and Sandman would have been the only villain, and it would have been like this idea of, Peter losing his grip on reality, not being there for Mary Jane, then finally needing someone there to be for him, and he doesn't want anyone there because he's closing himself off, and then they kind of go through this idea of, because most of our villains at this point haven't really been like people who you can get behind or root for in a way, like there's some villains out there where you're like, yeah, okay, this is still a villain. I don't agree with what they're doing, but I get why they're doing it, and I do kind of root for them a bit, And Sandman in this film, in the third film, is someone where, you know what, I feel for him. I kind of root for him a little bit because he doesn't deserve the lot in life that he's been given, but he's been given it, right? And I don't agree with what he's done or what he's doing, but I get all of it. I understand it, and again, you root for him a little bit.
Yeah, I get you there, but by making him Uncle Ben's killer, like, okay, on the one hand, fine. He's the one that pulled the trigger. He had a partner. Fine, okay, let's run with this. Okay. But then kind of comes the entire, there's a scene which, in all honesty, is great that you have, after the climax and everything, where he explains to Peter that he actually shot Uncle Ben by mistake, and Peter tells them, I forgive you. That's actually a really good, strong moment, which shows that actually Peter kind of learned something about forgiveness because Harry had to forgive him for realizing that, because he didn't really kill his father. I'll get to this in a second. But then there's but the retcon that he did this by mistake. That means Peter couldn't have stopped it. It wouldn't have mattered if he stopped that guy or not at the wrestling ring. There's a good chance that the guy would have still shot Ben by mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That takes away from it for me. Like, you could probably read a few different ways into this, but the way I see it, it kind of takes away from the impact. It kind of takes away from Peter could have stopped it.
That's completely fair because, again, the entire idea of Spider-Man is, or one of the big ideas behind Spider-Man is, he's, in some way he feels like he is to blame for for Uncle Ben's death, right? That it is his fault.
That he lets some guy slide. He let something slide, thinking, what does this have to do with me? And then that same guy ends up taking away his father figure. And that's the thing that, that character relies on. And when you do this, oops, there was some guy who just happened to shoot him by mistakes, it kind of takes away from it. But I don't know. But you know what? Let's say, okay, there was a good scene where Peter, and then someone goes, all that matters now is my daughter, and he flies away. So what, are they just gonna fight again the next time he robs a bank? Conclusion?
Maybe. Yeah, again, like, you can kind of see what they might have been trying to go for here, but it's just the movie's so loaded and you have so much going on and you have just all these different like side stories essentially that could potentially, if you focused on one of them, have really good, a really good moral point behind it and be really good growth for Peter and Spider-Man. But because you have all three kind of dueling, and it takes away from all three of them. All three of them fall flat. Not one of them.
And
two of them have good moments, but that's about the best you can give them.
And then there's the entire thing with Harry, where the butler, by the way, that butler, what is this actor? What is this performance? Someone tell me.
I love him. I love him. He's adorable.
I love him but not for the right reasons.
He's adorable. Don't bully him. He's an
No,
old guy.
because
He's
then
doing his best. I love him. He's
but
adorable.
for years, he didn't tell Harry that Norman died by his own glider.
Listen,
For years.
he's a butler.
And
Butlers keep secrets, man. Butlers don't tell shit.
Yeah, but then there's the entire "I loved you just as much as I loved your father" thing. It's like, tell him! You see how much he obsessed over this guy who swings around in a pajama.
When you're a butler, you take an oath to never reveal any secrets that you see. And I'm sure as butlers and maids and all that shit, they see some shit. They've seen some shit. There's some secrets out there that some people hold that they can never tell anybody. And this guy's one of them. But he broke the butler oath is what he did. He went out on a limb for Harry, and he didn't have to, but he did. There's a butler creed, HC, and you can't break it. And this dude broke it for Harry, for love. That's my guy.
And you could have told him that before Peter blew up half his face. That's love.
Nah. The butler creed, though, HC. Dude has to die first before you can break the butler creed.
I'm not going to argue this. I am not going to argue.
Don't. Because I'm full of it. But yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's really stupid. It's a really dumb moment. It's a sweet moment, but it's also like when you stop to think about it for like 5 minutes, it's like, why didn't you say something sooner? At all? Why? Like, what was your reason other than the butler creed for not saying a word beforehand, knowing, what Harry was doing and everything at that point? It's really dumb. Yeah. I agree. It is.
So yeah, that's something I won't argue, but I guess no more doing this. Let's talk about Venom. But
the
before
best
I get
villain.
to my big... Now, seriously, say what you think before I start my rant. Go.
He's okay. Like, it's about... The design isn't, like, terrible. There's, actual Venom is much better design, but I've seen worse. It's not saying much.
So that's all you have to say? That's
in looking at film 3, right? Looking at Spider-Man 3, in a film with three villains, this is the least one. Like, this is the one that I don't care about. If you took him out, I would be missing nothing. If you took the symbiote itself out, we'd be missing nothing. And we'd obviously be better off. Well, I take that back. I don't know if we'd be better off or not. Meme-wise, we wouldn't be better off because the memes of Tobey Maguire trying to be cool or emo or whatever the hell you want to call it, and that's goofy as hell dance, the world would be a worse place without that.
My favorite YouTube video is actually him going around the street and like somebody took that scene, removed the music, and just made it, actual sound. Like,
oh God, that's just creepy.
That is the best video you'll see on YouTube. Like, I
think I've seen that too. Yeah.
If whoever edited that watches this, dude, you are a genius.
Clap. But I mean, yeah. Meme-wise, we would be worse off without that. But for the film, it would probably have been better for it if it just wasn't. If none of that was there. Let's be honest.
Well, time for me, the Spider-Man fan who also happens to like Venom the most of the Spider-Man villains. I was really excited when I saw that they're doing the black suit stuff, and you can't tell me that wasn't the intention because the black suit shows up in the posters and the trailers. They were banking on the fact you were going to see this. I make sure you know this because we are doing Venom in this movie, and I was really excited. And what made the symbiote stuff so interesting in the comic? Because it actually tortured Peter. It was like a drug addiction to him. He loved the power, he loved the speed, but it made him push the people he loves away. It made him a lot more aggressive. It was legit an addiction of any kind. It was an addiction. What do they do here? They turn them emo. Seriously, this is what you did. You could have made an entire movie just with this arc, and this is what you did. You were going for that goofy dancing thing. Really?
Let's
Really?
let's be clear. They didn't really turn him emo either. It's just, let me put a little bit of hair just barely over one eye. Now I'm evil Peter now. Meh.
People call him emo Peter. But then
Either way.
there's also but they overplay this thing, and it's like and he has this smile that's like, I'm kind of cool. Like, I don't know even how to describe it. It's like, what is this? It looks like a pimp. Like, he has this smile.
He looks like
Dr.
a creep.
Calls him, it's like, oh, Dr. Connors. It's like, and then he asks her, like, do you have milk with those cookies? And it's like, really? Really? We could have done so much more with this. Hell, the Spider-Man 3 game did this better. The video game did this better.
Agreed.
Now, let's go back. So then we get this like dramatic scene where he's, getting the symbiote off with the bell and everything. That's actually kind of cool. That's actually a cool scene where he's like, but what happens before this, right? Before this, he takes Gwen Stacy to a club just to show off to MJ. And then there's this entire thing where he's getting to a fight and he hits MJ. Okay, so like we have this goofy ass scene which wouldn't be out of place in a Chicago crack film. And then he hits MJ and goes to the church in order to like do this. And it's like, what is pacing? How did we go from 0 to fuck off? Like, what the hell?
As I said,
And
like,
then,
without if you take out all the Venom stuff, you'd be left with a better movie.
And then there's also this thing where, again, Eddie Brock is in the church for whatever reason. It's like, kill Peter Parker, Lord, please. And the symbiote falls on him. He turns into Venom. Again, that's like the comics. I'm not gonna.
What a prayer, by the way. Praying,
Yeah.
like, if you do one thing for me, God, it's the only thing you could ever do me for. It's the only thing I'll ever ask for. Kill someone for me, God. It's like, damn, what a prayer.
And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
What a prayer, by the way.
If anyone got the reference I put in here with the if you do not listen, then to hell with you, that's from Conan's prayer in Conan the Barbarian. It's exactly the same thing. Anyway, so Eddie Brock becomes Venom, and Venom looks like a damn stick.
Mm-hmm.
You know that honking monster guy from the comics with the tongue and the sharp teeth and everything? Yeah. He's slightly more muscular than Peter now. Just slightly. Way to fuck up the entire dynamic of the slim guy versus the muscular guy. Again, it's right there. It's not, I know, adaptation changes. If the changes don't make sense and this one doesn't make sense, why do it?
I think
do it and then,
I'm going to be entirely honest. I think this one might have been just down to they didn't want to CG all of that with the actor, maybe, but I don't know.
Then get a better actor with a proper physique.
I mean, no, like they would have to CG Venom anyways, and I just don't know if they wanted to use all that. I don't know. I'm maybe just making excuses for them. It's bad.
I
guess, it's bad.
But then again, there's this entire thing where he constantly takes the head off, and it's like.
Well, I say that, but then we have giant Sandman CG too. So, never mind me. I'm just coming up with bullshit at this point.
Actually, fun fact: both Doc Ock and Green Goblin were supposed to be the villains of the first movie, but because of budget, they cut Doc Ock.
So it was supposed to
So
be Goblin and Doc Ock, and that's it.
yeah, in the first one,
Okay.
and then because of budget, they cut Doc Ock off.
Hmm.
Yeah, anyway, so and then there's this fight with Venom where again Venom is kind of a pussy. And I kind of like the idea of how again when Peter realizes that sound hurts him and he's remembering the scene in the church, he has this adieu. And then okay, he gets Eddie out of the symbiote. The symbiote grows into this monstrosity thing, which actually looks kind of cool. And then it throws the bomb on it. Eddie jumps, Eddie, boom, and that's it. That's all we saw of Venom. 10 minutes.
You got more than
Kid
10
me.
minutes. Venom
And,
was Evil Peter, by the way. So you got more than 10 minutes. You got Evil Peter, so you got Venom there too. Because he wore the suit. And he wore a black suit after that, so it was all Venom, HC.
all that I have to say on the matter is that teenage me. How old was I when this was around? I think for a 14 years old me was very disappointed, and adult me is baffled by how they handled Venom.
It's bad. If you've not seen it, go back and watch it. It is amazing, but it's bad.
All I'll have to say is harp on the new Venom movies for all they want. They got Venom 10 times more than this movie ever did. And this is I'm even going to say that this is a fact that the new ones got Venom much better. So fight me.
Again, I'll keep coming back to it, right? I feel like the third film tried to do too much. Like it should have focused on two villains, not three. Like they should have dropped Eddie Brock and Gwen Stacy and Venom from this film.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's
they
a lot
tried
in
to
Spider-Man 3 that they
throw it
try
all
to
in.
shove in.
Like
Yeah, so I
even
think
just the forced love triangle and just the back and forth between Mary Jane, Peter, and Gwen, it's all just ugh, no, stop, please. You're veering into
and
bad. Wait, Spider-Man 3, don't do it. Oh, you've did it. Well,
yeah.
too late now.
Oh, so here's the thing. I think we kind of covered everything we had to talk about. You
Well,
have anything to add?
I feel like, again, right? It is worth saying. We've talked about a lot of flaws these movies had, but for the time, especially the first one, there's a reason why we talk about it. You'll hear many, many other people talk about the first film, along with a few others, but the first Spider-Man film from the Raimi trilogy set the stage for comic book films that came after. Like, if that
Mhm.
movie didn't succeed, if that movie didn't exist, if that movie didn't come out and it didn't succeed, the MCU would not be around as you know it today. And that is a
And
fact. Like people
yeah,
who say that, they don't say that lightly. They genuinely mean that. Like this film left its mark
mhm.
on the film industry. The first one.
Yeah,
Second one, yeah. The third one, take your, depends on who you talk to and what you talk to them about. But the first one,
okay. So
it left its mark for a
that's
reason. And while these
yeah,
films do feel like products of their time, and while these films do have their flaws, and you can see those rough edges because they were still figuring comic book films out at the time, you can see there's a lot of good in there too. And you can see where the good that's in there, like looking at Doc Ock and Alfred Molina's portrayal of, Doc Ock, like looking at Sandman and the guy who plays him and his portrayal of Sandman and everything they did there, right? You can see that good portrayed in the comic book films that came after, where they tried to be more character and story focused and really do something and really ground stuff more in a way that feels relatable to some degree. You can see that in comic book films that came after, right? So these films, they do hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts for this very reason. And that's a good thing. But just
yeah,
know that when you go into them, you are going to back in time to something that is, to a degree, a time capsule, and to a degree, the early stages of comic book film.
yeah. And again, keep in mind when even though I was pretty critical in the last few minutes of this podcast, I still love those movies. I have my issues with them, but I still love them and I appreciate them for what they did and how much they impacted me as well, as I said. But it's also the fact that not everything is perfect.
I
And I
mean,
think saying that ignoring it just because it's nostalgic, ignoring it just because it's at a standout, that's not an excuse. On the contrary, I think the fact that they set a standout is, just means we can look at them a bit more critically just to see where we started and where we are now.
mhm.
And I know some people still hold these movies to very high regard, and like again, I love them too. But it's also these had problems, and I think it's important to know now that they had problems because it just helps us appreciate them more for what they started and where we got thanks to them. So
You know,
that's
I'll say this, right? I think guaranteed, if you go back and watch these films, if you've never seen them or if you have seen them and it's been a long time, you're guaranteed to get more laughs out of it. Because,
Mhm.
while they do try to have their serious moments, a lot of it is because of its age, because of those beginning steps and just some other stuff and its flaws here and there. There's a lot of stuff that supposed to be funny or goofy, but it comes off that way. I probably ended up laughing a lot more than what I did when I first watched these films. But that's okay because they're still fun. And sometimes that's all a film needs to be fun. And these are. So if you've not seen them, go watch
Mhm.
them. You're in for, in my opinion, at the very least, a fun time.
Yep. So the Spider-Man 4 story.
Yeah, I've not heard about this one. I didn't know there was supposed to be a fourth one.
There was supposed to be a fourth one because until Far From Home, Spider-Man 3 was the highest grossing Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
Hold on a second, I just need to. People don't understand I'm recording, so I need to let them know that I can't do woke stuff now. But okay,
Yeah,
you know what? What
Spider-Man
would you
3
do for
just
Spider-Man 4? What would you do for
what
Spider-Man 4? Like
oh.
what?
um can I redo Spider-Man 3 first? If it was me, right? If I knew for a fact I was getting four movies, right? Third movie, focus on Harry and Sandman with Spider-Man. Do some stuff there, stuff with relationship with MJ. Things happen, blah blah blah, you do that movie that way. Fourth movie is where I would potentially go into Venom, personally. That's what I think I would have done. Maybe not quite exactly like that, but something to that degree, right? Where you have a either Harry's your big villain in the third one, or it's Sandman and Harry, or just Sandman. Something in there, is something where maybe it would be better if it was Sandman and Venom in a film together, and that would be the fourth film. But it's something to that degree to like bring out the best in all three characters. And I think having them all three in one movie doesn't help them all. So you need to split one or two of them off into one movie and then give one of them their own full movie. So something into to that degree is what I would do for a fourth film.
So the thing that was supposed to happen was that Spider-Man 4 was in the works. Sam Raimi apparently really didn't like how Spider-Man 3 turned out, so he wanted to. This was supposed to be his redemption. What happened is that he and Sony disagreed on which villain was supposed to be in the movie. Raimi wanted the Vulture, and Sony wanted the Lizard, if I recall.
Hmm.
Some drafts were made, some things were thrown at the wall. There are even a few storyboards which showed that Bruce Campbell's cameos in all three movies was supposed to be him as Mysterio, Quentin Beck, auditioning for roles,
That's
and the fourth
cool.
movie would have, and the fourth movie would have revealed that. But the thing is that eventually the movie just dropped because Raimi couldn't agree on any script. So after this, Sony just said, you know what, the hell with it. And in order to not lose the Spider-Man license, they rebooted the films. So there was supposed to be a Spider-Man 4, which got somewhat into production and then just dropped when Sam Raimi decided to quit.
Fair. I think there's some interesting ideas put forward there. I think it would have been interesting to see, them do something with the cameos from what's his name again? Sorry.
Bruce Campbell?
Yes, Bruce Campbell. I remember people, I swear. Yeah, Bruce Campbell. It would have been interesting to see them do something with that because it is a little weird that you see him in like 3 different places just absolutely being a dick to Peter every single time, just about. It's kind of funny, but also, if they were going to do something with that, it would have been neat. Something they could carry through. And, it would have been interesting to see the Vulture or the Lizard because I think they do have like the Lizard set up with his like physics teacher, right? Missing an arm. Like, is that supposed to be the Lizard, quote unquote?
Yeah, the guy who helps him with the symbiote, and we see a bit of him in Spider-Man 2 too, that was supposed to be the Lizard. The actor was there and he was even interested in doing the role.
Interesting. So yeah, I think that would have been neat. Like they had a couple of options there. It's sad that they didn't get to do it and that we didn't get something from it because maybe it could have been better and maybe it could have really done a lot more and finished off the trilogy, right? In a better way than what the third film did. But at the same time, I don't feel like I've missed anything, to be honest. Personally, anyways.
I honestly can't tell you where it would have gone because apparently Black Cat was also a part of the script, and I can't. And we
Sounds
are
like
doing
we're
three
doing too
villains.
much again.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what was supposed to be. And honestly, the problems already started with Spider-Man 3 because Sam Raimi wanted to use the Vulture in Spider-Man 3, but the studio told him, no, put Venom in, he's famous.
I mean, again, though, that's still 3. Again, it sounds like they were trying to do too much. It really does. It really does sound like. I mean, you can do multiple villains in one film, but it's difficult. Sometimes it's just better to do 2 at most because it feels you're able to give them the focus they need and deserve in order to get them across to some degree. Doing multiple villains in one film, unless they're very much bit villains, you're just not going to get anything done with that. And it's just going to take away from the film, in my opinion.
I don't, honestly, I can't tell you.
So if the 4th film was
I
going down
can,
the same road,
yeah, it's one of those moments where, again, I can't tell you what could have been because obviously it didn't happen. You could have said that Spider-Man 4 would have been better than what we have now. You could say it was worse. The fact of the matter is we don't know. All we have is theories.
Which again, it's fine.
So,
Again, I think, right, as said before, judging the series on what we did get, I'm happy with it. I enjoyed it. I've had fun with it. And I don't feel like I need more. Would it have been interesting to get more? Absolutely. Based on what I'm hearing about what we would have gotten, I'm interested. I would be, I would say I would be cautiously optimistic for it, but I would also have the third film's 3 villains, and it's kind of let down in at least one of those villains' regard to kind of keep me grounded in my optimism somewhat and my hype, I guess you would say, that it may not be as good. Let's bring it down a couple notches and ground it out, and maybe they'll release it and we'll see. But we didn't get that, so don't have to worry about it. But interesting, at least.
Yeah. So we can't tell what would have happened, but what we can tell you is that after this, we got a duology of films, which we'll talk about next time. And I'm excited to hear what you'll think of them. But until then, that was all for this episode of The Outcast. We hope you enjoyed. What are your thoughts on the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy? You can tell us all about it in the comment section below, on our Tumblr, which is Berkcast Team, on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital B, capital C. So until next time, I was HC.
I was Wolf, the one who hates Spider-Man.
Yeah. And appreciate the butler of all characters. And we'll see you on
Butler
next time.
Creed.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. And we'll see you on next time. Take care. Bye-bye.